Nobody tells you this in your 20s. You get your first real paycheck. Maybe it's not huge, but it's yours. And there's this quiet pressure to look like you've got it together. You buy the nice shoes. You grab the nicer apartment. You split dinner bills without checking the total. And somehow, 5 years pass. And you're not actually further ahead. Not because you blew it on something dramatic. Not because you made one catastrophic mistake. Just the money moved, and nothing came back with it. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. It's not always what you bought that kept you behind. Sometimes it's what you didn't buy. My name is Garrett. And for a while, I genuinely thought saving money meant not spending it on anything. Just hold it, protect it, let it sit. What I didn't realize is that in your 20s, certain purchases don't cost you. They build you. And skipping them out of fear or frugality or just not knowing can quietly add years to the time it takes to get somewhere. Today, we're going through 7 things worth buying in your 20s. Not in the flashy, upgrade your life sense. In the quiet, compounding, your future self will actually thank you sense. Let's get into it. There's a version of be smart with money that gets passed down through a lot of families. And it basically sounds like, don't spend unless you have to. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because the truth is, money doesn't just sit still. Every year it stays parked without doing anything. Inflation quietly trims its value. Every year, you delay building a skill or an asset. Someone else gets further ahead. Not because they're smarter, but because they started. Your 20s aren't just a decade to survive financially. They're actually the most compounding, friendly decade of your life. Small investments in yourself during this window pay back at rates that become mathematically harder to replicate later. That's not motivational poster energy. That's just how compounding, financial and personal, actually works. So when we talk about buying things today, we're not talking about consumption. We're talking about acquisition. Things that appreciate, things that compound, things that quietly shift the trajectory of the next 20 years. 1. Your first brokerage account. Not a savings account with a 0.5% interest rate. An actual investment account. Index funds. Low-cost ETFs. Whatever fits your situation. The reason this belongs in your 20s, specifically, comes down to time. A 25-year-old who invests a modest amount consistently has decades for that money to compound. A 40-year-old, starting from scratch with the same income, has half the runway. The gap between those two people isn't intelligence or discipline. It's timing. A lot of people hold off on investing because it feels complicated or risky, or like something you do once you have real money. But the irony is, waiting until you have more money means you've already spent some of the most valuable years of the compounding window. Opening an account costs nothing. Starting with a small amount every month is enough. The goal in your 20s isn't to get rich from it. The goal is to start the clock. 2. A skill that doesn't come from your job. This is the one people skip the most and feel it the latest. Your job teaches you what your employer needs. That's useful, but it doesn't necessarily teach you what the market values broadly, or what gives you negotiating power, or what you could monetize independently if you needed to. A second skill: writing, data analysis, design, coding, video editing, sales, public speaking, whatever fits your direction, changes the math of your financial life. It creates optionality. You're not locked into one income source, one employer, one industry. The purchase here isn't always a course. Sometimes it's a book. Sometimes it's a few months of consistent practice, but there's often an investment involved. And the people who treat it as optional tend to feel it when the job market shifts, or their industry contracts, or they want a raise and have no leverage to ask for one. 3. Health that you pay attention to now. This one gets skipped in your 20s because your body quietly forgives everything. Bad sleep, skipped checkups, years of stress eating, no movement. It absorbs it for a while. But what happens at 35 or 40 is the bill starts arriving. Chronic issues that build slowly, energy that drops, focus that gets harder to maintain. And the financial cost of fixing health problems is almost always higher than the cost of maintaining them. The purchase here might be a gym membership you actually use, a decent pair of running shoes, a consistent therapy or mental health routine, an annual doctor's visit, supplements if blood work shows a gap. None of this is glamorous, but treating your health like an investment in your 20s rather than an afterthought is one of the highest return decisions you can make. You can't compound your wealth if your body is working against your focus, your mood, your energy, and your ability to show up. 4. Books. Specifically, the right ones. Not just any books. Not reading for the sake of reading, targeted reading. There's a reason consistently high earners tend to read heavily in their 20s. Not because reading is magic, but because compressing years of someone else's experience into a few hours of your own time is one of the most efficient uses of money and attention that exists. A $15 book on personal finance, behavioral economics, negotiation, or entrepreneurship contains frameworks that might have taken the author decades to develop. You get access to that for the cost of lunch. The compounding effect here is subtle. You don't read one book and change your life. You read 50 books over 5 years and notice that you think differently. You make different decisions. You catch patterns earlier. You ask better questions. That's not self-help mythology. That's information compounding into perspective. 5. Your credit score. Treated like an asset. Most people in their 20s either ignore their credit score or see it as something that matters when buying a car or a house. And yes, it matters then. But it also quietly affects things you might not expect. Rental applications, certain job screenings, insurance premiums, interest rates on debt. The purchase here is education and attention. Using credit responsibly, paying balances in full, keeping utilization low, not opening and closing accounts carelessly. Building a strong credit history in your 20s means that in your 30s, when the big financial decisions show up, you have leverage. Lower interest on a mortgage saves you tens of thousands over the life of the loan. That number is not small. Treating credit like a score to optimize early is one of the most invisible high-return moves a person in their 20s can make. 6. Time spent with the right people. This one sounds soft. It's not. The research on financial outcomes and social environment is consistent and slightly uncomfortable. The people you spend most of your time with during your 20s shape your financial habits more than you'd probably like to admit. Not through pressure, through proximity, through what you normalize. If everyone around you spends carelessly, saving feels weird. If everyone around you is building something, even slowly, building feels natural. The purchase here might be a conference, a community, a membership, a course where you meet people operating at the level you want to reach. It might be intentional time invested in relationships that challenge you rather than just comfort you. This isn't about cutting off friends. It's about also being deliberate with who influences your financial default settings. Because those settings run in the background, quietly, all the time. 7. a system for your money, not just willpower. The last one is the one that holds all the others together. Willpower is a limited resource. Most people who struggle financially aren't weak or undisciplined. They're running everything through manual effort, manually deciding whether to save each month, manually tracking spending, manually keeping the motivation going. Systems remove the decision. Automatic transfers to savings, automatic investment contributions, automatic bill pay. A simple budget structure that doesn't require you to be emotionally disciplined every single day to function. The purchase here might be a financial app, an hour with an advisor, or just a few hours learning how to set up automatic transfers at your bank. The cost is low. The payoff is removing the friction that causes most people to fall off track. Because here's what actually keeps people broke. It's rarely one big decision. It's the 1,000 small moments where the automatic behavior wasn't set up and willpower ran out. Build the system in your 20s. Then, let it run. Here's what ties all 7 of these together. None of them are about looking wealthy. None of them are about the dopamine hit of buying something new. Most of them are invisible. Your friends probably won't notice. Nobody will comment on your brokerage account or your credit score at dinner. But that's exactly the point. The things that actually change financial trajectories over a decade, they almost never look dramatic in the moment. They look boring, quiet, like small choices nobody's watching. What makes your 20s so disproportionately powerful is that the boring choices made now have compounding time behind them. The same move made at 40 doesn't have the same runway. It's not impossible. It's just different math. You're not behind. And this isn't about getting ahead of anyone. It's about not waiting until later to do the things that only feel optional because their absence isn't immediately visible. You don't need to do all 7 this month. That's not how this works. Pick the 1 or 2 that feel most missing from your current setup. Maybe it's opening the investment account you've been putting off. Maybe it's finally setting up automatic savings, so you stop relying on discipline. Maybe it's buying 1 book in an area you know you're weak in. The goal isn't perfection, it's momentum. Start with awareness. Noticing what you've been treating as optional that actually compounds. Then take 1 concrete step. That's it. Not a dramatic overhaul, just 1 real move, followed by another over time. Your 20s don't have to be this perfectly optimized decade. They're not. But there are a handful of quiet investments in knowledge, systems, health, skills, and relationships that the people who look back with financial peace almost always point to. Not the flashy ones. Not the ones that got them compliments. The invisible ones they made when nobody was watching, before the payoff was obvious. That's the part that usually gets left out. The money psychology isn't complicated once you see it. You were never bad with money. You just weren't shown what the quiet version of building actually looks like. Now you have a better picture.